Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the GSMC Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Mara Fatemi. In this next segment, we're going to tackle the 5-6 matchups coming up, back-to-back matchups between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Detroit Pistons. The Milwaukee Bucks, one of the hottest teams in the NBA right now, on a 6-game win streak, as well as the Pacers. Three teams in the NBA right now on a 6-game win streak, with the Pacers and the Bucks in the East and the Clippers in the West. But the Bucks obviously coming off a win on Tuesday night against the Minnesota Timberwolves, coming back going on a 34-3 run to finish that game against the Timberwolves to ultimately get that win. One of the wildest comebacks I've ever seen, easily one of the wildest comebacks of the regular season so far. But this matchup these two matchups between the Bucks and the Pistons this weekend are going to be crucial in terms of how the NBA's Eastern Conference stacks up. Not only will the Bucks be able to avoid the Indiana Pacers in the first round, they'll also be able to avoid the Boston Celtics in the second round, which would be crucial in their hopes to not only get Damian Lillard back before the conference finals, but ultimately make that Eastern Conference Finals a little bit more interesting if the Bucks can make it there. But I think these two games are more about the Detroit Pistons than anything, I'd say. Obviously, the Detroit Pistons being one of the youngest teams in the NBA, I mentioned it at the top of the show. Every win that they get builds their confidence. It's plain and simple that way. They hold all the cards. If they win these two games against the Bucks, they will acquire the 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. But yeah, overall, if they can, the biggest X factor matchup in this game will be Giannis versus Jaren Duran. I don't know. I just went blank for a second, but that battle is going to be crucial in terms of if the Pistons are not only going to keep this game close, but if they can ultimately win these games. Also, the emergence of Cade Cunningham has been unbelievable for this team, and he's going to need to be timely not only in these two games but come playoff time, if the Pistons are going to be one of those teams that can knock off one of the top 2 seeds in the Eastern Conference. In that matchup between Going back to the Milwaukee Bucks, in that matchup between the Minnesota Timberwolves, it was their bench, and specifically Kevin Porter Jr., coming up big in that fourth quarter, finishing with 21 points in the game. If the Bucks are to win this, in general, whoever wins this game, their benches are going to be critical in the wins for both teams in general, because Pistons obviously have one of a more younger teams, a younger team in general, or a more younger bench. The Bucks have more of a seasoned veteran type squad. They don't really have as many young players. They have a Brook Lopez. They have Kevin Porter Jr. They have Bobby Portis. They just have a bunch of guys that have been around the NBA for a long time, and they have more seasoned veterans, more experience than these Detroit Pistons. But yeah, like I mentioned, if the Bucks can secure that 5 seed, they can avoid the Indiana. They can avoid they'll face the Indiana Pacers in the first round, which will be a tough matchup, but they'll ultimately also avoid the Boston Celtics in the second round. So if they can, I'm not 100% sure. Damian Lillard has hinted at a return very soon. But his impact will decide if this team can go on a deep playoff run, especially with how they've played as of recently. I think it's very similar to how the Timberwolves have started to figure it out, getting that chemistry down late in the season. With a week to go, Timberwolves also obviously have been doing this for a longer stretch of time. But the Bucks, no, nothing against the Bucks. They're playing unbelievable basketball right now, and they deserve all the credit in the world. On this 6-game win streak, they have wins, like I mentioned, against the Timberwolves, against Miami Heat. They have had a little bit of more leaner schedule against the Phoenix Suns, the Philadelphia 76ers, New Orleans Pelicans twice. But these two games against the Pistons will really tell if this team can go on that playoff run that I mentioned. If they can get a first round playoff, if they can win a first round playoff series. And it's honestly for both teams if they can win first round playoff series. Yeah, both teams really getting hot here, coming close to the end of the season. The Pistons have get a little bit of a pass. They've been missing their number one offensive piece in Cade Cunningham for the last 2 weeks. He's been back in the lineup for the last 3 games, but similar to Jalen Brunson, we just need to give him a little bit of time just to kind of figure out his offensive shooting. He's been much better than Jalen Brunson on that end of the floor, but just let him get his feet under him, especially as a young player in general. But like I mentioned, if Detroit can win both of these games tomorrow and Sunday, they will hold the 5 seed. But if Milwaukee can win, Milwaukee clinches with a win. So both teams really control their own destinies here. Obviously, Milwaukee more so, as they have more of a 50-50 shot. But I'm going to take a short break. In this last segment coming up, we're going to take a look at the my playoff predictions. Obviously, the Western Conference at the moment is a little bit deeper than the East, but that's no knock against the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference is still one of the best teams in the NBA. Detroit Pistons, like I just mentioned, the Bad Boy Pistons V2, redemption team of the Bad Boy Pistons, very physical, very tough team. The Bucks, more of a seasoned veteran team. The Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers, the top 2 seeds in the Eastern Conference. The Indiana Pacers and Milwaukee Bucks, both two of the hottest teams in the NBA, both on 6-game winning streaks. The Eastern Conference is not up for grabs as much, but if I'm going to dive into it and kind of give an argument for all of these teams from 1 through 6 specifically on how they can really go on a run and really how their 3 through 6 is kind of being underrated a little bit. In the West, of course, we have the number 1 seeded Thunder, as well as the mess, the number 2 Rockets, number 3 Lakers, and then the mess between 4 through 8, which honestly anything can happen right now. And that is going to be the specific topic of the Western Conference. Anthony Manzano talked about it earlier in the show. He asked the question. This is the time when we're going to talk about this. But I'm going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at all of that. Be right back, guys.